Hello again, Michael Ware with IFC's Warrior Wednesday. In case some of you are new, IFC is the Iowa Firearms Coalition. I can't believe you wouldn't know that, and now you do if you didn't. Go to iowafc.org and check us out. We're Iowa's only effective Second Amendment organization and advocacy group. We've got with us today Tony Henry. But before we jump into this, I want to make sure everybody remembers, go to iowafc.org, and we need your membership. We need your volunteerism. Maybe you're sitting there thinking, I've listened to this a few times. I like these guys. I wonder if there's some way I could help out. If you see in our volunteering tab something that may fit you, great. Or if you say, well, maybe there are other ways that I can integrate, engage, and serve. Super. Reach out to us with an email, whatever else, and we'll see what we can do. We'll have a conversation, see if it fits. And always go to the Trusted Partners tab and check out the people that are supporting you. These are organizations, these are businesses that have said, we're investing in you because you invest in us. Program codes, discounts off tangible services, you name it, it's all there. You're only going to get those things if you're an IFC member, so it's another perk of membership. We appreciate that. Now, Tony Henry, tell us a little bit about yourself and let's jump right in.
All right. Yeah, so I'm a Creston native here in Iowa. Grew up here. Worked in various emergency services capacities from, as young as they had let me. As long as I could start putting into IPERs, that's all I cared about, Mm-hmm. And in 2018, I transplanted to the Houston area in Texas by trade. Full-time fireman, paramedic down there. But I got my fingers in all sorts of things at different times, all sorts of added on education opportunities, training, stuff like that. So live an eventful life. And I'm actually back at my parents' today, doing a little hunting, shooting some pheasants, quail, maybe some geese tonight. Take a little intermission today to warm up, and just enjoying the Southwest Iowa opportunities.
All right. So you were born and raised in Creston?
Yep.
So what was the draw down there? What was the draw south? I'm curious.
Yesterday, so that would have been the 14th. It was 2 degrees here, and that was a major contributing factor. Today's not too bad. Today's warmed up a little bit. I'm not too upset about it. But I didn't particularly care for the cold. I didn't like working in the cold. Sometimes to expand horizons, you got to venture out a little bit. Mm-hmm. And that has absolutely afforded me so many opportunities that I probably wouldn't have been afforded if I, stuck around here. Not that Creston's a bad place, but when you network outside of your comfort zone, things are just thrown in your lap sometimes that you just can't turn down.
Fantastic. So what kind of things were you involved with as a kid when you were running around Creston?
We were just talking about it, came back this last week. My dad wasn't doing too good and he ended up passing away. And so we've been talking about all sorts of just good memories back in the day. And one of them that, we talked about is Dad and Grandpa Joe. When you saw him grabbing the 5-gallon buckets in the winter out of the garage, you knew you were going to go sit on that ice with a 5-gallon bucket and hand drill, a hole in the ice and go ice fishing. And, that's, yeah, if you listen to Steve Ranella, stuff like that, they talk about levels of fun. And, that's at the time, one of the bottom levels of fun. But looking back, you're like, man, those were darn good times, Yeah. And it was cold, but it's a fond memory now. And, you look across the ice and you see people with ice shacks and heaters and gas powered ice augers. And, we're over there just roughing it with our tip up poles. We were lucky to have those back then, So, yes. We lived on the lake here in Creston. So, I was homeschooled. So I was, very, very flexible with my schedule. And I would work diligently to be done with all my work and down to the lake, go fishing. Got into some upland hunting with Grandpa Joe when I was about 9. I think this year was the 22nd opening day in a row that I've attended, even with moving. So,
fantastic.
Just any sort of outdoor sportsman's recreation, and that's my enticement to come back and visit my family. Don't tell them I said that.
Well, if they listen, they'll know, but I won't call them up. Something like that. let's back up for just a second. First of all, I knew that when you and I made arrangements for this, that your dad wasn't well. I'm sorry to hear about his loss, but the
Appreciate
fact
that.
and we'll certainly be praying for you. And I don't say that lightly. We will. But it's also really cool to be able to share some of these stories. And it brought me. My dad passed away a little over a year ago myself, so I have some relate with getting back to where you were, and the things associated with childhood. And I can remember the 5-gallon buckets.
Yeah.
Now, when I was a pup, see, I'm 50 now, so when I was a pup, there weren't pop-up canopies, dude. There weren't shanties that were heated and all this stuff that you just slide out there on the ice and you'd have a bang up time with maybe a snort of whiskey and a cigar. It wasn't like that. There may have been people that had that stuff, but it wasn't anybody in my neighborhood. Actually, in point of fact, I grew up a little south of Creston, so we were in Bedford.
Sure.
So I know the neighborhood well. But I can remember my dad saying, "Hey, do you want to go ice fishing?" I'm like, "Well, sure, Dad. Let's go." And it was super cold, and we went on this little pond and 2 5-gallon buckets. And he had with him at that time that he was the DNR officer, the conservation officer for the neighborhood. And Dad and him were pretty good buddies. And so they were giggling over there, which should have told me that there was tomfoolery afoot. You know what I'm saying?
That's your red flag.
Right. But as a pup, I wasn't terribly seasoned yet with my dad and his buddy giggling. So I'm like, "What's up?" And Dad's like, "Well, I see you're not catching much, son." I'm like, "Nah, only a couple. I got some nibbles." And as you know, when you're trying to catch fish through the ice, most times they're not aggressive. I mean, sometimes when what we were fishing were mostly bluegill and that kind of stuff, you can barely tell that there's a bite, So I didn't do well. And Dad's like, "Well, I think the problem is, son, is your bait's very cold." I said, "Okay, how do I change that?" He's like, "Well, here." And he handed me a little can of waxworms. He's like, "Son, you got to put them in your mouth." And I said, "Well, I don't understand." And he's like, "Fill your cheeks with them and get them warm." And he said, "And then change your bait out frequently." He said, "The warmth will draw the fish." And I said, "All right." So I filled my cheeks up like a little ground squirrel. Worms, So that
like
didn't last
sawdust
long.
and all.
Oh no, they're the little waxies.
They come in like the little sawdust. And you got to pick them out.
But I mean, I did my level best with very cold fingers. Stuffed them in my yap, and sat there. And of course, the giggling ensued. That continued, and I'm like, "What's going on?" And Dad's like, "Well, we've been giving you the business, son." And he wasn't mean or anything like that. It's not the kind of guy he was, but they did get me. I did spit the worms out. That was the last time that I ice fished for a decade or thereabouts. But it's at the time I was miffed. Now it's a heck of a story, and I can remember. I'm thinking about it in my mind. Both those old boys are gone now, but that is good memories. I don't mind that. When I talk with my friends that live in the city and have grown up as city kids, whatever else, they have fantastic experiences too, but they're not like that. So I have an appreciation for where I came from and the things that helped shape and helped shape who we are now. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, looking back, you recognize the influence that, whether it be dad, grandpa, and those people that are involved in your life. And, that's where I learned how to shoot a gun, how I cast a pole. I was casting and catching fish on my own at 18 months or so, I'm told, and, I'm striving to do that for my kids too, and afford them those opportunities. And luckily, we're very blessed with flexible jobs, and we can get back up here and visit family and do the fishing and go out to the farm and ride horses and chase around, cows and stuff like that. So that's something that, it kind of just reinstated in my mind this week that, I got to give my kids, the experiences that my dad gave me, even if, I know he worked real hard to give us those opportunities as kids. And, sometimes you just got to step up and make some sacrifices for the kids and give them those opportunities that you now look back on and recognize some of the best times of your life.
Yeah, no kidding. So as we go down through your resume, so your childhood is yes, it's Creston, and yes, that is a city, but it's not a big city. So I would still consider that rural or mostly rural upbringing. So what kinds of things were you involved in as a pup?
I did a lot of stuff with 4-H. When I was, from middle school all the way through high school, trained dogs, showed dogs, 4-H projects. When I was, let's see here, right before I turned 17, joined the fire department here as a volunteer. Did all the rigmarole for that. Ended up, making my way up to the paid, career staff there, and ended up going to college, got my paramedic. Somewhere in between there, I went to Hannibal, Missouri for criminal justice. When I came back, no one wanted to hire a 20-year-old cop. In Iowa, you can, but people, tend to kind of stray away from that. And I said, I'll wait till I'm 21 and then throw some more applications in. And that's when I went to paramedic school, and I never applied for another police department or sheriff's office again. I love medicine. I love firefighting. The place I'm at now, we do both. We run the ambulance and, all the fire suppression, extrication, hazmat, not my favorite. And so it's kind of the best of both worlds for me there. My end of high school, kind of beginning of college, was very heavily involved in continuing education, learning all I could about medicine, about firefighting, and just, public service as a whole. Prior to that, running around with the friends, football games, tomfoolery. There's all sorts of stuff, as a new freshman, sophomore age that, we never got in trouble, but we had all sorts of activities.
I did. I got a lot of trouble, but nothing that I was punished plenty, but everything I deserved, of course. I never had any trouble as a Bedfordite making my way up to Creston. I really didn't. I can tell you that when I went south, down into Missouri, down in Maryville, I got in. I was asked to leave on no uncertain terms many times in that town. So it just the Iowa boys seemed to be a little more accommodating. When I got into Missouri, they didn't care for my kind. Just the way it was.
Yeah, that's great.
So were you doing any shooting during this period?
Oh yeah. I started bird hunting with my grandpa about 9 years old, and let's see here, it probably would have been about when I was 11. I'd been asking for a dog for a long time, and my parents were like, no, we don't need a dog. You're busy. You're going to be going into all sorts of other extracurriculars. Let's hold off. And they never let any of my siblings have a dog or anything like that. And in fact, they didn't even let them have toy stick guns back in the day. That was frowned upon. Mom would break them over her knee. Yeah. And, here I am with my own 22 by, 10 years old and getting a 410, just a whole host of BB guns and pellet guns. And that evolved into I'm not going to say an addiction, but a lot of finances are tied up in investments.
Yeah.
Long barreled kind. And so, grandpa started to get older and, kind of transitioned. He'd go out and kind of post, and, he had all the permission back in the day. So as long as he was with me, I'd go out there, I'd walk by myself. And when I was 11 or 12, a little black lab puppy just showed up at our house. And I was like, well, this seems meant to be. And mom and dad are like, no. And my older brother Toby got caught wind of it, and he says, Mom, all of us siblings, we had other siblings when we were there, and my next oldest sibling is 14 years older than me, so she was done married, moved out. I was essentially an only child at the time. He's like, let the kid have a dog. And that's where I kind of started into the 4-H and field training for retrieving, flushing, and that was kind of the entry into my dog handling experiences. So very, very good foundation from a lot of well versed individuals with managing either hunting dogs or just general obedience dogs in general. So yeah, that's kind of and then I'd throw in some deer hunts here and there. I never really got too crazy about it. I'd always go out late muzzleloader season just because I enjoyed the intricacies of using a muzzleloader and the increased risk of, if you miss, you don't get a follow up. So the the incentive to make a good precise shot, and so I would late muzzleloader hunt for quite a long time, and since I've moved, I've yet to get drawn for a tag. So
it's
I'm
coming.
waiting patiently.
There's something to it when Granddad hands you a single shot, whatever, or a muzzle or whatever else. For me, I can remember things like being handed 222 rounds, a pair of them, and a rifle, and being sent out. Bring back something.
Yep.
2. You got a box of that stuff. Can I have some more? Nope. 2 is what you get, and make them count. And and you become self-reliant, and you become a good shot, or you recognize maybe this isn't for me. I don't know, but because that does happen, Tony, you know that.
Oh yeah.
But I do like the idea that you go out there and you're self-reliant, and you need to make the best of what you've got. It's not that I don't have a heck of a lot of fun handing somebody a 10-22 with a banana mag. It's not like I don't, okay? But I think there's something to be said for knowing this is all you've got. You're going to have to make it count. And oh, by the way, you may only get once. And with a muzzleloader, now I do have friends, and you probably have done it, and you have folks that have done it too. I know folks that have popped one off, reloaded, and got a second shot.
Oh yeah,
but it's pretty rare. I mean, that doesn't.
It's far and few between.
So you mentioned a puppy. Have you ever high-fived Sis for this, or did you actually get her over and actually give her a big old hug, or how did that work when she advocated for you?
Well, it was my brother, Toby.
Oh, okay.
My sisters, they were all moved out and lived out of state at the time, and he lived in town here. I actually repaid the favor. So I ended up, that dog lived for probably 10, 11 years. He ended up dying, and I got a new yellow lab puppy from a breeder down in Missouri. Bred her several times. We had some pretty good litters out of her, and one of them went to a place called Palmer's Labs up in Brayton, kind of up by Atlantic, and she also bred one of those puppies from mine. And I knew that I wanted to get a puppy from her to keep the bloodline going once my current lab got old. And she's 11 now. She hunted this morning with me. She retrieved quail like nobody's business. So she still got it. She's just a little slow. And so last March I went up there, picked out a puppy. I'm hunting grandson, grandma right now is kind of what I'm rolling with.
Yeah.
And my nephew, Sam, he's in the last 3 years just become quite the hunter. And he was out there the last 2 years kicking grass by himself, walking ditches and public hunting, and which I want to just mention, Iowa has a great public hunting access program compared to other states that I've been at. Just a little plug there. So they had,
come back to that in a minute. But
yeah. So they had one puppy left, and I told Sam, and Sam's like, man, I said, I don't know if my dad's going to let me, I'm busy with college. I said, man, I had a dog through college. I made it work. No big deal. So we got a hold of Toby. I said, hey, you vouched for me when I was, young. Time to repay you. I said, that boy needs a dog. I said, these are great dogs. I said, they're my bloodline. They're health tested. You can't go wrong with them. And he ended up going up there and getting the dog. And so now we run grandma and brother almost every day I'm back. So it's worked out very, very well. And
that's a fantastic story, dude.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that people write books about.
I ain't much of an author.
You never know. I had a guy on for Warrior Wednesday just the other day, from way down south, and he wasn't an author. I mean, but golly, it's hard to explain. He wove together some pretty serious stories, and somebody said, well, you understand, and he's buddies with Sheriff, what is it? Is it Mark Lamb down in Arizona?
Oh yeah, out of Pinell County.
Yeah. And they were visiting, and he said, "Well, we were the only people that know these stories. The world doesn't understand these things. You got to share what happens when these things go on, and what law enforcement is like here." And he wrote a book, and I just ordered it. I don't know if it shipped in today or not, but anyway, you never can tell. You might be an author, and you don't know it.
Might be my big break. We'll see someday, maybe.
Okay, all right. So anyway, go back to your comment about Iowa's public access and hunting.
Oh man, yeah. So, one thing I learned moving to Texas is everything is monetized. It's pretty difficult to get on any type of wild game unless, you're paying for a lease somewhere. And that was a huge learning curve for me when I moved down there. I just figured go out to the marsh and shoot ducks, right? Which, don't get me wrong, there's places you can, but it's so saturated and so overhunted. You get stale ducks and stale deer, and it could be, pretty frustrating. And I'm not hating on Texas and their conservation programs or anything like that. As you get out west, there is more public access, but I can drive up here in about the same time I can get to West Texas. So, I kind of, choose wisely. I can do 2 for 1. I can come up here. I can get good land access from connections I've made, as well as public land access, and see my family and see my wife's family. So, we just always come up here. But, the DNR, they've, had their state-owned properties for, many years. Some of these are, 20, 30-year-old state-owned properties that are public hunting. And then they've kind of introduced what's called the IHAP properties, which is Iowa Habitat Access Program. And it's kind of different than some other states. Some states have to have, just footpath entry. You can go out there and do whatever you want. So you can go fly RC airplanes. You can go shoot ducks. You can go try to shoot quail, but there doesn't have to be a habitat aspect. With these IHAP properties, there has to be a habitat aspect to these properties in order for them to be eligible. And it's private landowners like you or me that go to the DNR and say, hey, this property is coming out of CRP or, whatever program they may have it in. We'd like to let it, be used now, as it's intended for, hunting purposes. And they do, I believe it's a 5-year contract with the state that, if you look on Onyx or whatever platform you use, it says, Tony Henry owns this property, but it's highlighted orange, noting that it's an IHAP property and you can access that for, no cost, which is very, very nice.
So that's a lease program, a short-term lease?
Essentially. And I don't know what monetary gain or loss, one party, or another would experience with that. I haven't looked into that. All I know is, they're great options for people who want to get out, want to try hunting, because that habitat portion of that is there. And if you look on the DNR's atlas, the public hunting atlas, it says, great for turkey, quail, deer. If you get, up northwest Iowa, it might just say only pheasant. They might not have turkey and deer up there. So it kind of gives you a guide of how you can narrow in to increase your success rates and make a good harvest on these properties. So it's very nice.
Well, it's a big problem if you look at how much square acreage Iowa has in ratio to how much square acreage is available to public hunting. I want to say that I'm going to mess up this statistic, but I think that Iowa either is at the very tail or maybe even last in the nation in ratio of public ground versus private.
Yeah.
And it's a real problem for newcomers or people to get out there. And Iowa's a good hunting spot, not for everything, but for a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so there are a lot of outside influence that comes in and a lot of outside grabs, if you want to call it that, on land leases and whatever else for the purposes of hunting. And some of it's just spoken for. You aren't going to get access to it. And so I don't know. As a core conservative type, I wrestle with some of this because I really don't want to see public funds being used at an auction against a private guy who wants to buy it to produce food, whatever it is he wants to do with it. None of my business. But by the same token, I do sense that we have a responsibility to help some of these things move forward and flourish. And I don't know how you're going to do it. without buying something or whatever else. I wonder if some of these lease programs, especially starting out short term, might be a good way to go. Because it seems like you're checking the right boxes without a huge obligation on the front end or ongoing problem downstream. I'm looking forward to seeing it, and if these kinds of programs end up flourishing, because I think they can.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a big benefit to me, and don't get me wrong, like I've done my fair share of, knocking on doors, shaking hands, and you get the, oh yeah, absolutely, have at it, be safe, and then you get the, man, I'm sorry, my grandkids hunt it. Hey, yeah. I get that. That's great. Like, you've worked hard for your property. Let those grandkids enjoy it. You can't knock someone for that, right? But when when you're in a pinch sometime, and you're just like, man, I want to get the dog out, these IHAPs are a great option.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that rabbit was worth chasing. And we knew that in this conversation that we'd have some, but the truth of the matter is there truly is a juxtaposition between these two camps. Don't spend any public money on this. And oh, by the way, get people out and to enjoy Iowa's natural resources. Well, I'm not sure that you can do both at the same time. So there may be something in between that works, or maybe it isn't in between. I don't know. But I'm interested to see if these programs can work. And I know that I have read about other states really throwing in to some of these short and long-term lease agreements with the private property owners for the use for public use, rather. I hope that maybe we can try it on a much larger level eventually if it works. So this is good.
Yeah.
Are you having any heartburn with the costs associated with being a non-resident now and coming back and hunting?
Oh boy. So this is a hot topic right now on any of the social media platforms or forums online. I still feel like I'm a resident at heart, right? Like I still have my private land access that I've never, lost and all this stuff. And I get it. You get these guys coming in from, Ohio, Illinois, Kentucky coming up here. I guess they feel like, South Dakota is kind of the mecca, right? When you want to do some pheasant hunting. And they're like, Iowa sounds like a good stopping point. And they flood, all these public access because, like you said, we are a little limited. It is increasing. And that puts a bad taste in residents' mouths. Something that some people have been wanting to push is, the first week of upland. So the last Saturday of October to the first Saturday of November is for residents only. And as someone who comes up for opening weekend, I would hate to see that, right? That's going to break a upcoming 23-year streak. As someone who did live around here and recognizes some of those struggles of, you get CRP that comes out of CRP program and it gets turned into row crop. These farmers are doing what's best for them financially and for their properties. And sometimes row crop is the best option for them and to take these properties out of some of these programs. So, we're losing property probably is just as fast, if not more, than we're gaining, access to be able to hunt properties. So that does put a stressor on the residents. Off the top of my head, I think if I want to come back and get a year-long non-resident with a duck stamp, which I generally have that before I'd come up here anyway. Habitat fee, migratory bird fee, it's pert near $220 probably for the year. Do I feel like I get my money's worth? Absolutely. If you're someone out in one of these more, outlying states that you want to come here for a week and you might not feel like you get your money's worth. And I don't know if that deters people or people really don't care, but it has been a hot topic recently.
Maybe we could make a concession for a former Iowa boy. And I think a way to test that other than through some sort of legal means is if you use pert near in a sentence, and you just did. So when you said that, I'm like, yeah, that dude's from Creston. That's a Southwest Iowa boy, no doubt about it. I know. When you hear pert near or I reckon, when I say those things, my friends around here, because I live northeast of Des Moines a little ways. We have a little hobby farm, right, not far from Baxter. And when I say stuff like that around here, they're like, "You're not from around here, are you?" I'm like,
you get that little eyebrow raise.
I'm still Iowa. I mean, we're still similar. I know, but you said pert near. I'm like, okay, fine, get over it. Anyway, I don't have a bull guard on the front of my truck, although I could get one. I mean, that's a thing now. If you go outside after this recording, you run around, you'll see tons of bull guards on pickups. When I was a pup, I'm telling you, there wasn't much of that.
Mm-mm.
Those guys' trucks looked terrible because calves ran into them and kicked them and dented them, but they didn't care about the bull guard. Now everybody's got a bull guard, but you don't find near as many of those where I live in or around central Iowa, but they still occasionally they're seen.
But yeah, I mean, there's no heartburn particularly. I recognize that I'm utilizing, our resources in the time that I'm up here, probably more than some of these residents even. We hit it, pretty hard while I'm back. And so I'm all right with it.
Okay. All right. Well, I don't hear quite as much grumbling about birds. I really don't. Some, not a lot. I hear a lot of grumbling about deer.
Yeah. And
I mean, that's a big deal.
And off the top of my head, I think if you do get drawn for a statewide intersect tag, it's somewhere in the vicinities of $575 to $600. So that is steep. There's deer tags for Iowa going on auction at, Pheasants Forever Banquet, like the Flush, the podcast, they had one a while back for upwards of $20,000 sometimes. So, and yes, Iowa grows big deer. I've got a coworker up here right now, and he's been coming up with me for about 7 years now. And he even recognized, he's like, man, Iowa grows some fantastic deer. The way we run our conservation system has a lot to do with that. And one of those things is not letting every Tom, Dick, and Harry come in out of state and get any sex tags and shoot terrace to terrace with high power rifles. So.
Yeah. I've got different opinions on the matter. I don't care about growing big bucks. I really don't. I think they naturally come with time and conservation practices. I'm not too worried about the method of take. I think if you're going to be concerned about that, then limit tags or limit this or limit that.
Sure.
But when you say, I want to have you use a sharpened stick and relegate that to rut periods or whatever else, it may sound like a good idea on the front end, but this is a personal opinion, not an IFC position, but it's my personal opinion. That borders on cruel, because there are much more humane ways to take game than a sharp stick flying through the air. I mean, I think it's silly. I'm not. Now I do shoot a bow, and I am not an archer. Maybe that's why I don't shoot one very much. I'm not very good at it, but I probably could practice that. But it's just kind of one of these things where we all have different ideas about how this ought to be done. I'm less concerned about that and more concerned about maybe an act of God, or a disease coming through and really putting the hurts on the herd in Iowa and around. I mean, we have these invisible lines, but Tony, you know how this works. These diseases don't discriminate based on zip code. They just move and you're in trouble. So we'll see. And
correct me if I'm wrong. It's been a while since I've researched it, since I haven't been able to deer hunt up here. Iowa has kind of opened up some of the regulations on cartridges that you can use recently. Yeah. I knew for a while there was just straight wall cartridges, 4570, but I think you can use some neck down cartridges in some way, shape, or form now, if I'm not mistaken.
It's 350 thousandths and up, 500 thousandths and down, and I want to say 500 foot-pounds of energy. So you've got basically this range of performance. If
Mhm.
if it's this size and it'll hit hard, then we consider that humane and off you go. So it's
Sure.
much more streamlined than it used to be. So and then as near as I can tell, that works well. In full disclosure, I do own a gun shop, custom shop rather, and people are using all kinds of really interesting stuff, and it's been a lot of fun for them. So I'm
That's
seeing
cool.
a lot of people have all kinds of different success, and then with things that don't beat them up so bad in the shoulder, and some that look to me like they're punishing. I'm like, that wouldn't be my choice, but if you like that, you go right ahead. So I don't worry about shooting terrace to terrace. Some guys need a little bit of a learning curve, but I do remember as a kid going out and watching hunting parties, which doesn't seem like it happens quite as much as it used to.
Mhm.
But I remember seeing hunting parties with 8, 10, maybe 16 guys, or these orange dots descend down on from the top down into a valley, and you see slugs being lobbed. So, no, this is metaphorical, mind you, but being
Mm.
lobbed like artillery. And I sit back thinking, is that a good idea or not? Well, okay, they're wanting to put meat in the freezer. Okay, get to it. So there's
I
more than one way to skin that cat.
Yeah, I think before I moved, it was just shotguns and just muzzleloaders. I don't even think there was any, center fire options before I moved, and that all has transpired since I moved. So I'm kind of out of the loop on that.
Yeah, no, it's changed. It's changed a little bit, and it's like anything. Try it, and if it doesn't work, you tweak it and make some changes. But it looks pretty good so far.
Yeah.
It's interesting that we're talking about some of these deer, and I don't have an. Okay, this is all unofficial, but apparently a really large, or one of them, it isn't as big as the. What do they refer to that as? The albia buck, I think, is probably how it's best known.
Yep.
Okay, it's not that big, but I want to say I thought that they said the raw score in this one that was just shot just south of my house here, 250 something, 253 or something like that. Now it was kind of interesting because, and this is no joke. I mean, I talk to so many hunters. I am one myself. We tend to embellish, when the fish are this big, they're usually, like,
Mhm.
you know how it works.
Holding them out like this.
Oh yeah. If you could figure out how to extend your arms any farther, you would, Anyway, these guys were coming to my shop. They're like, "Are you aware of the King Kong deer standing in your driveway?" I'm like, "Yeah, get out of here with that." So I'm envisioning, maybe this thing is a 12-point typical, or maybe even 14-point, or maybe 10, maybe 12-inch tines, possibly. You know what I mean? But these guys keep driving by and texting me or calling me or walking in here and saying, "That's the biggest deer I've ever seen." I'm like, "Yeah, whatever." And because I haven't seen it. My daughter hunts. She's like, "I haven't seen it. I don't know what you're talking about." I'm like, some of these guys are pulling my leg. Well, now this thing gets arrowed just south of my place here, and all the neighbors show up with their trail cam photos. "I stalked that thing for 2 months." Like,
Mhm.
what's the matter? Why did you stick an arrow in it? Well, he was out of range. I didn't think I could take a 50-yard shot. I'm like, "Well, I'm glad you didn't."
Yeah.
But
If
the
you're
young
not
man
comfortable doing it, don't do it.
Yeah, the young man who did has got quite a story. I hope to maybe get him on and see if he wants to tell it. But there are big deer out here, and I saw the pictures that they sent around, or he sent around. Actually, tremendous. I haven't seen anything like it, but now I got literally next door neighbors coming around saying I've seen him at your place many times. He's chasing a lot of doe, so maybe he'll leave behind some genetics that are really valuable. I don't know. I guess we'll see.
Yeah. As long as someone was able to put on a good chase and a good harvest, you can't really have hurt feelings about that. So
No, I suppose
no
not.
matter how long you've been tracking them on your trail cameras, 6
Yeah.
miles down the road,
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing about it is I've done this thing for a number of years. I do most of the hunting that we do is either right here on our little place or at our family farms, not far from Maryville. Well, I used to get beat up all the time. But we go down there and hunt that Missouri season. So you know how it is. You'll see these animals on your trail cam, and you'll see them pretty routinely or somewhat routinely. And then, you know how it is. Season comes. Nobody knows anything about it. No deer or no buck. These same 3 or 4 that you've been watching, poof. It's like they evaporated. So maybe they moved on. Coyotes ran them. Neighbors shot them. Who knows? You never know how that goes. I mean, I don't know how you'd actually figure that out unless you had kind of a network of people doing something similar and you collaborated, because sometimes these things just up and they're gone.
Yep.
So anyway, I'm glad you came back to do some hunting. What else is shaking?
I'm back this week as well. I was kind of planning on it even before everything with Dad happened. One of my buddies that works for the police department here asked if I would come and teach a class to the TAC team here. I've been going around teaching a canine medical class called Working Dog, Working Medicine. That's kind of become one of my passions is education and going around. And, there's a lot to be said about, preparedness and keeping yourself out of situations that are ultimately going to end in some sort of, dispute or, injury to one party or another. But, sometimes you can't mitigate that. Right. And the trauma care after the fact is just as important as, trying to get yourself out of these situations that, may be kind of finicky. So I've been going around teaching these classes, like TCCC style classes. And one that I've come up on my own is called Working Dog, Working Medicine. And we spend all this time, learning classes like self-aid, buddy aid, if you're, a law enforcement professional that might be listening, stop the bleed classes, PHTLS, TECC, TCCC. And our canine partners have been neglected significantly. If you Google police canine injured, it's going to be article after article after article after article of these dogs that have been shot, beat, stabbed, injured in auto accidents. And we touch on all those things. We go all the way from how these handlers can keep their dogs at the most, the apex of performance just by preventative care, watching the ears, watching the paw pads, preventative care, medical, issues like bloat, that sometimes these dogs, especially if what we call the pointy eared variety, they're rather susceptible to, and then the trauma care of dogs. I talked to the firefighters about extrication concerns with, these canine vehicles that have different software and stuff, automatic door poppers. Sometimes dogs can only be accessed from one side or the other of these vehicles. And that's not things that, some of these people who are unfamiliar think through if they were to come up to, get called out to an accident scene involving a canine vehicle. So I'm teaching that Thursday here in Creston, and it kind of started out as, hey, let's just keep it to the TAC team. And then it kind of spread a little bit. And I think we have probably close to 50 people from around the state signed up, other canine handlers, patrol officers, paramedics, EMTs, firefighters, and I think even a couple people from some emergency management offices as well coming. So I'm really looking forward to that. Down where I'm at, we have Lifeline up here. They operate out of Unity Point Methodist in Des Moines, and we have Mercy One, which operates out of, Mercy, or the CHI program. And we have Lifelight out of Memorial Hermann, and that's one of the largest hospitals in Texas Medical Center. And they were the first. Let me step back. Dr. Red Duke, he was a world-renowned trauma surgeon, and he always took his dog everywhere in the hospital that he went. They would lay on the ground outside of the operating suite while he was, operating on, trauma patients. And one of his, duties within the hospital was he was the medical director for Memorial Hermann Lifelight, which is it's a legacy program that's been around for a very long time. But he wanted them to be able to fly police dogs that were injured or became acutely ill on the job to either Texas A&M or one of the independent emergency hospitals, which I'm talking a 24-hour, something like Blue Pearl in Des Moines, not your local vet clinic. So Dr. Duke ended up dying kind of before that came to fruition, right? A lot of the administration there kept that thought alive, and they have since implemented their canine treatment program as well. And one of our dogs for our department was actually the second dog they flew, Canine Big. And that's when I recognized that, like, we weren't firing on all cylinders when we had this issue with Canine Big. It was a heat exhaustion after he was on a track for about 2 miles. I noticed that, the right hand was not talking to the left, and we got to fix that. So that's why, within our department that we've kind of, come together. I've been able to get several of my coworkers, well, not several, a good handful of my coworkers into our local vet clinic to do hands-on skills, practical skills, airway management, starting IVs, the whole 9 yards. And then our handlers with the police department side of thing recognize that, hey, these guys, they're competent, they're capable, they want what's best for my four-legged partner, and it works much, much better. So I've been really, really enjoying growing this program. The vet that's got on board with it with me, she is just absolutely phenomenal. Anything that we need, whether educational content, educational opportunities, input on something going with one of the dogs, like she's on it with us. And that is not a working relationship that you'll see in very many departments around the US. So Herman has, I think they've flown 4 dogs total now, which that doesn't seem like a lot, but when the opportunity presents itself, you have to take into consideration things like weather, the status of the dog, right? Like, is this a dog that is going to have survivable injuries or not? Are there human patients that have to take priority? So a lot of pieces have to come together in order for that to work. But the times it has worked, these dogs have made excellent outcomes.
Yeah.
So
fantastic. I don't think that people understand this quite the way that you do. I'm glad that we're talking about it, because there are some people out there that value the life of pets, companions, dogs, cats, whatever it may be. They value them so much they might even put them on a pedestal above some human beings that they know or that they think about. That's an inherent mistake. I don't agree with that. But I think there's a lot of people out there that have become very utilitarian about, for the canine, for example, dogs and their use. I mean, when I was growing up, dogs served a purpose. And if your dog went over and ran after the neighbor's calves, you could assume that you'd never see your dog again. So it was, and you couldn't be mad at the neighbor for dispatching your dog if you didn't train him responsibly and keep him from shenanigans, right? Well, as I see it, since I've been around so many working dogs in my circles now, these dogs are not easily trained in order to do things exceedingly well. It takes time and lots of practice and perseverance. It's a tremendous investment. And oh, by the way, most of these dogs are doing very important work that end up ultimately directly or indirectly sparing human life. And so to put yourself in a position to treat these dogs and honor them a little bit and keep them in the fight rather than saying, well, this one's in bad shape, I guess it's forfeit. Now we'll have to start the search for a new pup and the 2 years of training it takes to get back to where we need to be. No, let's save them because we can. Yeah.
And if we can get a dog back on the street, back in the fight, in the course of 3 weeks, as opposed to, like you said, by the time you find a dog, go to handler school, do your, department qualifications, you're close to a 2-year-old dog by then.
Oh, without a doubt. This reminds me, earlier in the conversation, you were talking about things associated with heat or bloat. I'm not unfamiliar with that. We've had German Shepherds for years. We had a Corso for a while, but my brother had a really high performance German Shepherd, and it was a really hot day. I don't remember exactly what happened. Gave him ice cream, something. He ate too much at the wrong time. I don't remember, but kind of a mistake that he probably we should have known. Anyway, his gut twisted, and they got him down to Des Moines to a hospital and got him fixed up in short order. But it was obvious, hey, I'm pretty sure this is bloat. I'm pretty sure something's wrong here. You're gonna need to act on this because he's gonna keep breathing more shallow and he'll expire. This has got to be handled, or we got to do this differently. And he did, and it was okay. But I'm not unfamiliar with that. But I chased that rabbit because it makes me think about my own dogs, which do travel with us from time to time. Maybe I ought to be asking you, since there are a lot of people that have pets, especially dogs, travel with them, should we be looking at harnesses for them for the purposes of being strapped in a vehicle? how do you do that? I mean, are there best practices we should be considering for, we're in seatbelts. What should we be doing with our animals is probably what I should be asking you.
Right. And there are some harnesses that will attach to the upper tether, like where a car seat would attach to. And dogs are squirrely. Like they don't want to just sit there perfectly, all the time. Right. So you're constantly reaching back, untangling, stuff like that. So that is a difficult thing. The best recommendation I have is a good kennel that is secured well with, durable, hardware and ratchet straps. I'm not going to say the harnesses that clip into the upper latches aren't a bad option, right? It's probably better than nothing. And like by no means is this like veterinary endorsed information, right? But I run a product called Roughland Kennels. I know a lot of guys run the Gunner Kennels. And if you look at their website and their social media, these people are talking about these rollover accidents that they've been in, that their dogs have come out unscathed because the integrity of these kennels, they're not like these 2-piece Walmart kennels that'll just explode, upon impact. There's molded integrity and they hold together very, very well. And it gives that dog very little opportunity for momentum in a high impact auto collision. And a properly sized kennel, right? Some people feel bad, but you don't want your dog to have a lot of room in a kennel, just enough to lay down comfortably and turn around if they need to. You got these people that have, these, Springer Spaniels or German short hairs that are 40, 45 pounds, and they've got them in, a Roughland Titan kennel, which is like the size of a lean-to on the side of a barn. There's just too much opportunity for them to gain momentum in there and have, secondary trauma issues from, impacting something after an impact.
Yeah. No, when we had my wife and I, bought our very, very first German Shepherd from a performance line. And, in retrospect, we probably shouldn't have. Because we weren't prepared for what we were getting into. And when it became obvious that we had either A, made a mistake, or B, weren't ready for this, we sought the help of a professional trainer. And she said, listen, you guys are quite capable of doing this, but I'm going to train you how to do this well in a one-on-one setting. And you'll do fine because your dog's plenty capable. You don't know what you're doing. And so I appreciated hearing that. It stung a little, but she helped us a lot. And I can remember her saying, see that monster kennel you've got in the back of your truck? I'm like, yeah. She's like, be rid of it. She's like, I want this dog in a kennel that allows them to stand up, stretch out, turn around, and lay down, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And she said, and oh, by the way, it'll help. Keeping that idea fresh will help you in your future endeavors because dogs don't like to mess with what they eat. So crate training, all these things will end up being better with a properly sized kennel. For safety. And the other thing about this was she was like, listen, it's okay to have your dog in a kennel. She's like, the door doesn't need to be shut all the time. But she's like, you kids don't have kids. And they're going to be kids that are around. And sometimes your dog needs to go someplace else and be kept there or needs to go someplace else to retreat away from other things.
Yeah, it's a safe space.
Yeah. So she's like, with all these little kids around your house, and you need to keep your dog away from or vice versa. So because you need to know whether you have a certain level of trust that this dog can be around with your help. She never advocated for turning them loose off the leash, of course, but those things like that. And she's like, oh, by the way, you have a place that you go when your buddies come over with their little kids? I'm like, yeah, I go to the bathroom for extended periods of time. She's like, okay, your dog needs to be able to have this stuff too. So properly sized kennels make a difference. And it's interesting that you bring that up, especially when we're talking about trying to help them stay safe. It isn't something that I put a lot of time and energy into. I probably should. Yeah.
And you mentioned, the trainer saying you don't know anything, right? I've trained quite a few dogs, and the first, if you put like a spectrum of 0 to 100% trained, the first 30% is just me working with a dog, general obedience, following commands, recall, and then from like 30 to like 70% is you're training the owner. Like there's a lot of things that people don't, they don't know that there's right ways to put a correction collar on. There's right and wrong ways to correct for jumping, stuff like that. And they just don't know, and you don't know what you don't know. So a large portion of training a dog is actually training the human.
Oh, I've got to tell you, man, when it comes to dog training, although I would consider myself on a scale of 1 to 10, I might be at a 5. If I was really generous, maybe a 6. I have learned a lot of stuff the hard way. And I've been a beneficiary of a lot of people being willing to help me too, because I can remember learning how to use like a Hermspringer, like a prong collar, right? And all the things associated with it. My friend's like, "Oh, that's cruel." I'm like, "No, dude, I was taught how to do this." And as you'll notice, as when we're walking around here, there's a slack in the leash. There's slack in the lead. Well, why? I'm like, well, he doesn't need tension. And oh, by the way, I don't have to start him like a lawnmower either. I just need something quick. Which is, hey, tap on the forehead, essentially. Nope, pay attention. You know what you're supposed to do. And if you don't, I'll cue you in. That's all it takes. And then, of course, so I learned how to do that. I didn't know before. And then you watch other people, and their dogs are pulling on the lead, and they're absolutely choking themselves and panting. You're like, man, 15 minutes working at this 2 times a day, and you probably have that whipped in a week.
Yep.
You know, that kind of thing. And so you're like, oh, this makes a difference. And I'll tell you another one. I had gone through those things, but I did this in such a fashion. Well, this was with our Corso. He clued in pretty quick to when the leash was attached and when it wasn't, because I hadn't been using a tab or anything like that. I hadn't kind of transitioned in and out of, right? So he figured out pretty quick, I don't have to listen to you because you're not connected to me. And so I talked with some folks like, oh, you've got to get an e-collar, and that'll probably help with that a little bit. And then you can transition off that. So I said, okay, what's a good brand? Dog Truck, blah, 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 blah. I said, okay. So I went and got one. Oh, dude, I can remember having Recon out running around doing things. It was working really well. And then we did the off leash. And then together with the lead on, I would use the same correction with the leash. And just the tiniest, I mean, I put this thing, the barbs in my hand and turned it up to I could barely feel a tickle, because that's all you need, right? And I was doing it at the same time to teach between the two, right? I don't remember what it was. I still to this day I don't remember, but something happened, and man, he took off. And I tried to get him to call back, and he wouldn't respond to a recall command. And so I cranked it up quite a bit. I don't know how much, but quite a bit. And I hit it, and I've never seen that dog pick up what I would call overdrive gear in my entire life before then. But he ran what seemed like across the county. And so I figured out pretty quick, Michael, you don't know what you're doing with this thing, just like you didn't know the last time. But this time you know to call help for help so that you don't ruin this. So my wife's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm peeling this collar off because I don't know how to use it, but I'm going to help so that I do. And I did. And there was a really nice lady that specializes in that kind of stuff. And then I talked with there's a guy, I don't think he's in your neighborhood. I think he's the next state over. I think he's in New Mexico or maybe Arizona. I don't remember which. His name's Jimmy Lifshitz. He used to be Israeli IDF and some other stuff, and he lives here in America now. I think he goes by Your Dog Guru on YouTube or whatever else. I called her. He was like, yeah, I do this, this, and this, and report back. And it was fine. But
the e-collar conditioning is actually a pretty intricate process, especially, and there's differences from like, oh, I just want my dog in my yard. I want it to behave. And then like I'm hunting and I want my dog to be able to be managed by, vibrate or beeps, stuff like that. And you mentioned, kind of turning it up. I've got my handheld, I run the Garmin products. It's got 3 tactile buttons and then a bunch of touchscreen stuff. So I run the buttons mostly. One is tone, one is vibrate, and then there's one that has like a additional raised portion. And I call that the hand of God. Like that's something bad is about to happen, about to run in front of a car on the road, something like that. And he knows, like, if it goes from beep to vibrate, like that's next. Yeah. And he'll stop 99% of the time, but sometimes they just get so keyed in on something that you got to get their attention, and it's sometimes a life or death deal.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting we're talking about. I've moved on from that Dogtra 280 or 300 element, whatever it was, when I'm running. I can't remember, it was an 1800 or 1900S. and it's got 2 buttons on. I mean, they're both variable, but it's got multiple settings now. So I can keep that little very tickle on, which I use 99% of the time. And then you can hit another button and boost it on up if you need to. And I've got the boost set so that it doesn't bring him to his knees, but I'm like, okay, we're serious. You have to stop, or you've got to go, or whatever it is. So I've learned a little bit about that. I would still benefit from more training. I will tell you that, which is a good segue. So you've come back to spend some time with family, and because you scheduled it. So you scheduled this training a ways out, I take it?
Oh yeah, it's been on the calendar for a couple months. So it's
and you're doing this down south also?
Yeah. Are you talking about down south as in Crescent or Texas?
No, I'm talking. So you live and work in Texas, but while you're back, you're visiting in Iowa. You're putting on this training. So what I'm driving towards, if you can't sense it, is, are you planning on doing this when you come back on an annual or routine basis?
If there's the demand for it, and the word of mouth gets out and say, hey, this was valuable content, I think this is usable, we can take this back to our administration, our medical director, our veterinary offices in our hometown, and create these partnerships. I think that it would be great to be able to come back and do it, different locations throughout the state. The canine handler stuff, it's a small world, and especially within a state, the size of Iowa. So ideally, if people want me to come do that, or, I've got a buddy that's been doing it with me from, he used to work in Altoona, we would be thrilled to come up and put some stuff on like this. And it counts for continuing education credits toward everybody's professional licenses. So it's like a win-win-win, right?
Fantastic. I might be premature in saying this, and I don't think it's a mistake at all. I really don't. I wonder if there's a great deal of growth opportunity and more potential there, because I'm seeing dogs used in so many professional circles now. The first dog I was talking about, our first German Shepherd, we ended up getting him certified in this and certificates for that, and good citizenship, this and whatever else. And he had a very, very, very good, a very decent disposition. And I can remember when my granddad was in the nursing home for a number of years. For about 8 years, we took this German Shepherd every time I came into town. Where I'd gone back to Bedford. We took our dog with us everywhere we travel, unless it was on the airplane, right? And he was a hit. I mean, you never seen so many people catch another gear in a wheelchair to get to where this dog was. I'm not kidding, because they all want to run their fingers through his fur and you hang right in there. He was just a trooper. Kids pulling on his ears, didn't care. He sat right in there for all that stuff. But it was such a joy for these folks to handle and be part of a dog like that. And because of his size, it made it very easy for him to walk near a bed or a table or a wheelchair, and them to touch him and feel him easily. Little dogs a little tougher, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So I remember seeing that back in the day, but man, there are dogs in a lot of schools in Iowa. There are the emotional support dogs. There's a whole bunch of those right in this county where I live that are being used through fire and EMS to help immediately ward off what could become PTSD or something that's on down the line. So they can help people who have just experienced a trauma. Okay, let's soothe here a little bit. Let's calm down. You know what I mean? And so there's a ton of dogs in working circles now that weren't before.
Yeah. And whenever I go and teach this class, I try to get information about the area and the geography of the place I'm teaching it. And, for instance, up here, Sheriff Bolton has a crisis canine patch. And I just last night created a slide specifically for, I've had info on crisis canines, but I switched pictures out for pictures of his dog and his dog working and the benefits. And I mentioned, like, these dogs are going to be less susceptible to severe injury, heat illness, but they're not immune to having medical emergencies on shift. They're not immune to being in auto vehicle accidents while on shift, because they go everywhere. And kind of remind people that, like, this is a crisis canine. It serves a I guess what we would consider a calmer purpose in the grand scheme of things. It's not biting people. It's not sniffing narcotics, but they are still something that could potentially become a four-legged patient of ours. And they're just as important, if not, for our mental well-being, other people's as well, than some of the other single dual purpose dogs that bite and smell drugs.
Yeah. Amazing stuff. I had no idea our conversation was going to go this way. I didn't know. I had been told that you did canine handling and some of those things, but I didn't realize that really what that meant, or to the depth of that. When in most of the circles I've traveled in, when you talk about canine handling, you're talking about fur missiles that are hanging off some poor guy's arm, and then what comes next, and then in my own case, when you have dogs that are capable of doing these kind of things, and you shoots and train them, and you get them titled 1, 2, and 3, whatever else, there are tremendous responsibilities associated with having dogs that can do those things. And oh, by the way, worst case scenario, what are you going to do? Well, I don't want to choke my dog out. Well, I got news for you. You might have to, or choke somebody else's dog out to get them off. And how do you do that? Well,
bite or breathe, dog.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think about some of those things, but now that we're bringing this conversation full circle, we're seeing a lot more canine use in every facet of professional capacity. And I know, like, these crisis canine dogs, no, they're not sniffing out people buried in rubble. But if you don't think that those dogs don't come at a tremendous cost and a ton of training, I mean, folks, for you guys listening out there, some of these crisis canine dogs, in fact, most are being trained to ground shaking, fires, earth rumbling, sirens, all these things that lead to calamity and chaos. These dogs are being trained to hang right in there and not move, lay in one spot, so you can go over and run your fingers through their soft little furry butt and calm you down when all these horrible things are going on feet from where you're at, and they're having to train these dogs to resist their natural urge to get out of there so that they can help you. And so it comes at a real cost, a tremendous investment on these people's part.
Ooh. And I've known Sheriff Bolton for many years, and follow him on social media and see him around town. And I remember him posting while he was going through all of this training with Patch. They had to lay there while Lifeline landed like 50 yards away from him. They had to get in the fire truck and stay in the fire truck while the engine was running, and the sirens, the Q siren. Like, there was extensive just steadiness training, and just making sure that these, we would call them, like aggression or potential aggression or like panic cues don't affect these dogs.
Yeah. I remember when we took recon for one of those good citizenship, this Corso that we had, one of those good citizenship certs or whatever. The lady, I'm sure you've been through 100 of these. The lady grabbed, I think it was a Folgers can full of, I don't know, nuts and bolts. Yeah. And so my dog was sitting there, and recon was all chill. And she asked me to place him, so I did. She walked around, watched him, watch her, and got everything calm, went around him several times. It wasn't particularly paying a lot of attention to her. And then right behind him, she dropped the Folgers can behind him on a concrete floor. And I don't know if his eye actually moved or not, but that was about it. And she's like, wow, I did not anticipate that. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, I've been doing this 23 years. I've never seen a dog react like that. And I said, what do you mean? Yeah. She's like, I don't think he moved. And I'm like, so what? She's like, well, what do you do for a living? And I said, I pretty much sit in a shop with guns and tinker around on things with little hammers. So she's like, okay, a few years of listening to hammering and tinking and things hitting the ground, whatever, have made this dog so those kinds of noises don't bother him. I said, well, between that, machine gun fire, all kinds of stuff like that, no, he doesn't. Noises and those kinds of things, metallic noises especially, that don't bother him a bit. But now, when you do those things just as a social experiment, if you will, around some other dogs, I've noticed, those aren't natural sounds. They don't like that kind of thing. So I can imagine, a dog having to sit there while a helicopter landed, what they think is essentially on them. That takes training. It takes time. It takes a lot of work to get them to hang right in there. And not do natural things, which is run.
Yep.
Wow.
So it's a good little program that people are coming up with these crisis dogs. So.
Well, I got to tell you, Tony, I hope that the kind of class that you're putting on, so that people can administer aid to an animal that's giving people aid all the time, is not only successful, but continues to be increasingly successful. So I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's something that I enjoy doing, and I've got a great support network of people that have been contributing as well. So we love doing it.
Okay, so I think that it's important, since we've touched on it, and there are going to be people that listen to this that say, "Hey, I need to learn more about that," or how do I become involved, or how do I take a class? What does a class entail? What kind of training are we talking about? They're going to need to be able to get in touch with you. Are you prepared for that? I mean,
oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so how do we do that?
I guess you can link my email in the description, or you know what, even my phone number. I don't care. That I'm back enough, and I'm willing to make extra trips back. Especially considering the last week, I'm much more flexible and open to come up here. And I know we have probably listeners nationwide. I've been bouncing around kind of state to state, hoping to put this on in Florida at EMS World Expo coming in up on September. So different opportunities, but if it's something that someone wants to talk about, if you're a healthcare professional, paramedic, EMT, firefighter, and you say, I want to start something like this, how do I XYZ? Shoot me an email, give me a call. We'll talk about getting administration buy-in, prerequisites for being able to get people spun up to be able to provide this level of care. Clearly, full disclaimer, like there's a line between practicing veterinary medicine and saving a for all intents and purposes a uniformed four-legged police officer, right? So talk about legal considerations as far as providing care, and how we can streamline some processes from mistakes I've made and learned that things didn't work one way and didn't work great another way. So anybody can reach out to me, and if I don't have the answer, I've got people that will help me find an answer.
Okay, so is the email that you have simple, and we could rattle it off here audibly, because I will put it in the
absolutely.
Go ahead.
First name, last name, Tony Henry 2012 at gmail.com.
Well, that was easy enough. Did everybody get that? That was Tony Henry 2012 at gmail.com, correct?
Yep, that's right. When I was young and I made that email, I didn't make a crazy email like some of my friends. So I'm thankful for that as an adult now.
Yes. I've got a really good friend, a really super lady, Smashy Ash, that wishes she had chosen a different email. I'm like, well, maybe it's time to change it. I don't know.
I don't know if it was like a Keen and Peele episode or something. There's a little comedy skit where this guy's getting a coffee, and she's like, "Oh, we need your email for some rewards," and he's like, "No, you don't." Well, we can't finish your transaction without an email. It's like, no, you don't need it. And he ends up just leaving the coffee because he was embarrassed of his email he made when he was 12 years old.
Yes, no, I want to say that I've got, I don't know, 12,000 contacts or something like that, from dealing with customers for a number of years. There are some humdinger emails, dude. I mean, some crazy stuff. Oh, well, all right. So that's Tony Henry 2012 at gmail.com. Let's hope that first of all, your training goes exceedingly well. And I'd like to see more of them, and I'd certainly like to see you prosper doing it by all means, Tony.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And if it's not something that I'm able to do, we'll find someone that can do it. So there's some other people kind of starting to get out in there, out into the education world with this, and they're putting out some great content as well.
Wow, fantastic. Okay. Well, okay, let's wrap this one up. I really appreciate you coming on. I'm glad that you're back to do some things with the family again. My condolences on Papa Bear, but if you're a believer, there's got to be some solace associated with being freed from the world. So by all means, don't count that out. And I meant it when I told you before. If you want to call up and visit with somebody, I'll visit with you. If you need prayer, you call me up. I'll help.
Appreciate that.
All
yeah,
right.
there's a definite reassurance that he was one of the most God-fearing men that that I knew, and yeah, we're sad, but there's a peace to it. So
Fantastic. Okay, then. Well, I appreciate you coming on board. Best of luck on the hunt. We're going to sign off here. And oh, by the way, this canine stuff and this canine first aid, if you will, the response that we have in terms of EMS is always generated towards people. There's no reason that it can't be generated a few other directions as well. I like it. So thank you again from everybody here at the Iowa Firearms Coalition. Tony Henry, thank you.
Appreciate it. Have a good one.